Well, hello, good morning or afternoon, wherever you're watching and or listening. We love you equally without regard to how you're doing that. This is a little bit behind the times. It just didn't get enough attention. David Brooks, remember him? Rush used to call him the fake New York Times conservative. God rest you, Maha. He speaks for a lot of people. He does. We wouldn't have to like it, but he does. And he needs a little mental health help because his mental health requires you to have a crush on Kamala Harris, not a belief in her, not a backing her for policies, a crush. It's the only way he's able to defend this article. Why the heck isn't she running away with this? David Brooks. We'll talk about that, but we're going to pull something out that I also don't think got enough attention. One of the most insane leftists in Hollywood noticed the coup. No, not when Putin seized the election through his satellites, Donald Trump. No, the other coup. Jim Gaffigan noticed this. He spoke about it. And the response of the elites in the audience at the Al Smith dinner, it says something. We'll talk about this with the help of Renew.Healthcare, RENUE.Healthcare, and with God Almighty. And now, the new intro.
The Todd Herman Show is 100% disapproved by big pharma, technocrats, and tyrants everywhere. No. From the high mountains of free America, here's the Emerald City exile, Todd Herman.
Today is the day the Lord has made, and these are the times in which God has decided we shall live. Never met David Brooks. Shook his hands, but I never really met him. I just, hey, hello. He was in the studio with Michael Medved. Oh my gosh, you're David Brooks. So he wrote a piece, and it's in the New York Times, October 17th. And here's the headline. Why the heck isn't she running away with this? And there's a picture of Kamala Harris, and behind her, a pretty distorted picture of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, black and white, very stylized. Two things baffle me about this election, writes Brooks. The first is, why are the polls so immobile? In mid-June, the race between President Biden and Donald Trump was neck and neck. Since then, we've had a blizzard of events, and still the race is basically where it was in June. It started out tight and has gotten only closer. Okay, let's pause for a second. The polls are not immobile. There's been some pretty big movement, and most of it on behalf of Donald Trump, or rather to benefit President Trump, most of it. Secondly, this election has nothing to do with policies for a good majority of the people. It has to do with fear. They have been told that Donald Trump is literally Hitler. And in fact, yesterday, listener sent this to me, or viewer, we now have actual publications actually saying they're not suggesting any longer. They're past the point of suggesting. And I just saw this yesterday. Jeffrey Goldberg writing at The Atlantic. The headline of his piece is, Trump is literally Hitler. Donald Trump is the reincarnation of Hitler. It's not any longer what I'm saying is a joke where I say Trump is literally orange and literally Hitler. This is now an official position of one of the writers at The Atlantic. He's not kind of Hitler. He's not playing at being Hitler. He doesn't admire Hitler. He is literally the reincarnation of Hitler. And we know this because of all the Jews he put into prison camps and killed during his first term, and then when he refused to leave office. That's how we know. And the push into Europe, etc., right? That's how we know. The SS troops storming the country, breaking into the offices of LGB so-called T people and dragging them off to the camps, all of that he didn't do. So the polls are immobile for the reason that a lot of people aren't voting in regard to current events. So back to David Brooks' piece. We supposedly live in a country in which a plurality of voters are independents. You'd think they'd behave, well, independently and get swayed by events, but no. In our era, the polling numbers barely move. The second thing that baffles me is why has politics been 50-50 for over a decade? We've had big shifts in the electorate, college-educated voters going left and non-college-educated voters going right, but still the two parties are almost exactly evenly matched. This is not historically normal. Usually we have one major majority party that has a big vision for the country, and we have one minor party that tries to poke holes in that vision. The 1930s, the Democrats dominated the New Deal with the New Deal, and the Republicans complained. The 1980s, the Reagan Revolution dominated, and the Democrats tried to adjust. So why is it frozen this way? Because this is no longer about policy. This is no longer about things that can be debated. You can debate tax rates. They should be 35%. They should be 30%. You can debate war. We should fight or not fight. We should get involved, but with no ground troops. We should submit some money, but only if NATO does most of it. Those things can be debated. You cannot debate, is a man a woman? That cannot be debated. You either believe the truth or you believe the lie. And when you believe the lie, you get locked into believing all the other lies. That's how this works. That's how wedge issues have become permanent and non-related to actual things you can debate. You cannot abort half a baby. You cannot be for only some parts of the baby living, because babies don't work that way. You cannot be for kind of free speech. You are either for free speech or you are against free speech. Yeah, I know. Fire in a crowded movie theater. What has happened to the electorate is that people are outside now of areas that can be debated, and this is very much on purpose. And in regard to Kamala Harris specifically, why isn't she running away with it? It's not policy for most people. A lot of it is. We see what she's done, and we see what she's willing to do. We see what her party's done. But for a lot of people, it's simply not that. For a lot of people, it comes down to that whole beer rule and this fear and this loathing, and President Trump is literally Hitler. But let's go through some things she's done that repels people. And reasonable people are repelled by these things, up to and including getting her friends from Hollywood involved in showing you what it looks to be a dad, a girl dad. Did you see this ad, the girl dad ad? I'll show you this in a second. It's supposedly strong men from Hollywood talking about what it means to them to be the father of daughters. Okay, so we'll see this. Because apparently it means, guess what? One issue. It means one issue that can't be debated. Oh, it also means something about girls being far better than boys, because, you know, that's what all dads with girls think, that girls are just so much better than boys. It's nonsensical, it's non-scientific, and it doesn't need to be. There's scientific backing for what I'm about to tell you. You have to eat food to live. Non-debatable. Non-debatable. You have to have quality food in order to live well. Non-debatable. There are 3 macronutrients. There's fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Non-debatable. Proteins are the building blocks of muscle. Period. Not debatable. Now, here's what is debatable. Is it worthwhile to take digestive enzymes? Well, it depends. If you are the perfect eater in perfect pH balance, getting all your foods organically, maybe you don't need them. If that's not the case, or you're busy, you're in restricted weight loss, and you're in calorie restriction mode, then you probably will benefit from digestive enzymes. So which ones? How about I suggest Masszymes? Here's why. Matt and Wade at Bioptimizers refuse to put the Bioptimizers name on anything that they themselves don't use and that does not have great evidence behind it. In this case, a study at Berkshire International University showed that people who took Masszymes with their food saw a 1,200% increase in the presence of amino acids in their bodies. Amino acids build proteins. Proteins build muscle. Protein is one of 3 macronutrients you need in order to live a healthy lifestyle and to maintain muscle. That's scientifically backed. So is this. 10% is better than not 10%. Go to bioptimizers.com/Todd. Get 10% off Masszymes and all their products. It's bioptimizers.com/Todd. Get more nutrition for every single dollar you spend on food. Bioptimizers.com/Todd. Someone in Kamala Harris's circle, or around her, the concentric circles around her and the people who run her, came up with a great idea. Let's start talking about what it means to be men. Do you remember the ad we played, last week? that was actors pretending to be serious men for Kamala Harris. Now it's big-time stars. And if you're a daughter of dads, or pardon me, a dad of daughters, this is how you feel, according to Hollywood.
About being a girl dad. I love how much smarter she is than all the guys in the room already. I can tell.
Oh, look, they all laugh because it's funny. That's a shocking joke. And, humor is part shock. Really just deliver that. I've never thought of it that way. And just, man, he said that out loud, and it's just so funny. It's like when they use the F word. I just constantly am amazed. So shocked because it's edgy. Who is he? Is he someone famous? I guess he is. He's with famous people. Back to the video.
That she's going to be a powerhouse. She is already at 2.5.
My daughter's...
She's 2.5, and she's a powerhouse because he's a strong dad. This guy, I know, this is Ben Stiller, right? Is that Ben Stiller? Yeah, he did that thing where he was the fake model. Is that right? Okay, so one of the guys at SealFit, one of the coaches there, said I looked like the evil guy in that show. Is that right? Do I look like the evil guy? Okay, I actually non-committal. All right, don't talk. Whatever you do, don't give me feedback. Just make me do this on my own. Just sit there, Alex.
22.5, is a feminist, incredibly strong, and has really just inspired me in so many ways. I love her.
I'm the proud dad of Ella over here.
My vote for Kamala is an investment in my daughter's future.
I agree. I'm right there with you.
When the Dobbs decision came out 2+ years ago, I heard from Kamala right away, and then the next person was Ella. She texted me right away, essentially saying, we need to fight. This is not just an issue for women. This is an issue for men and families. And this is one of the many, many reasons why we've got to elect Kamala as president.
Never in my lifetime did I think that we would be having to fight for this and the fight for our own bodies. And I think it's really important for the men to step up and show that they actually support us and they're willing to put things on the line to help us.
Yeah, nothing says a man like being able to have a bunch of sex with no accountability. That's manhood. Nothing says girl dad like let's kill more girls. That's the hallmark of a man. Why isn't Kamala Harris running away with this, says David Brooks. It's ads like that. It's ads like a set of Hollywood dads telling normal dads how to be dads. It's tweets like this. This comes from a guy named Herman Mehta. This got a whole bunch of attention online. Jeopardy champ everywhere but Canada. Writer, YouTuber, podcaster. Congrats, conservative Christians. Your wish came true. He's responding to CNN breaking news. Infants died at higher rates in the U.S. following the Supreme Court decision that revoked the federal right to an abortion, new research finds. Yeah, it's the lack of abortion that caused infants to die at a higher rate. Yeah, it's not the modified RNA injections. It's nothing other than abortion. See, what they were doing was they were killing babies so that the babies didn't die. It's brilliance. Why isn't Kamala Harris running away with this thing, asked David Brooks. Because a lot of people are uncomfortable with pure, unadulterated emptiness. They'd kind of like to know who's running things. They'd kind of like to be able to bet on someone who exists. Because when a person exists, you can sort of count on them to remain the same to some degree. I mean, people evolve over time. My wife and I were talking about this the other night. People evolve. Or change. I won't say evolve because evolve would contend to mean become better. Let's say change over time because I'm not going to try to say I become better. I've changed. She's not running away with it because people who are actually voting on issues are also maybe upstream of issues because people are policy. And Kamala Harris is a wanton, grievously damaged, almost completely empty vessel. That's dangerous because empty vessels invite being filled. Nature abhors a vacuum. Psychology abhors a vacuum. Spirituality abhors a vacuum. Satan loves vacuums because he dives right into the vacuum space. She's not running away with it because a lot of people sense these things about her. It's not just me. Look at the black vote. She is in trouble with black voters because she's pretending to be an urban black person, a Detroit girl. Detroit girls don't like being mocked. Kamala Harris doesn't think they're smart enough to know they're being mocked. And yet, the numbers don't lie. I'm going to show you some polling. This comes from CNN, and they seem rather panicked about this because it's a genuine sense of, hey, what are we doing? Every time she talks, the numbers go down. So the polls, David Brooks, are not immobile. That's a fraudulent statement. I have to warn you that there's some fraud going on in coffee. There are people pretending to be Bone Frog coffee. I saw this guy the other day on the street walking around. He had a sign on that said Bone Frog. And I had to stop for a second. Wait a minute. Bone Frog coffee? That's not Bone Frog coffee. I didn't run over him, but I splashed mud on him. See, this is what happens with success. Now, on the other hand, there's people coming and saying, wait a second. Bone Frog sellers? They do wine too? What the heck does a coffee guy know about wine? Well, let me say this. Bone Frog Cellars has existed for a long time. There were some supply chain issues and some technology issues, but the bottles of wine my friends drank at my house was 2015. So it's existed for a long time, and they liked that vintage. My friends who like wine liked it. My friends who love wine loved it. I don't drink wine. Tim knows this. Remember, Tim didn't know a thing about coffee when he was a Navy SEAL, just that he liked to drink it. And he wanted to provide for his family. So when he moved back, he started Bone Frog Coffee. He consulted with and recruited to help mentor him Dave Stewart, who's a coffee legend. He did the same thing in wines. Who are some people who can teach me and my team how to make outstanding wine? So coming up for the holidays, just try a couple bottles, Cabernet and Merlot. And take your choice. Go to bonefrogsellers.com/Todd. You get 10% off the wines there. And of course, 10% of proceeds go to the Navy SEAL Foundation to help the families of fallen Navy SEALs. Or you can stop and see this guy. He's up at the 7-Eleven just off Celtice, and I think it's Idaho Street. And he wears that shirt that says Bone Frog. And he'll sell you the coffee, but it comes out of the back of a Subaru. So bonefrogsellers.com/Todd for the real thing. Harry Enton on CNN talking about the polls.
What is with all of this bedwetting among Democrats? Maybe it's an eternal problem, but let's take a look here. These are, of course, the Great Lake battleground states, the states we've been focusing in on. If Kamala Harris wins these three, she most likely gets to 270 electoral votes. Take a look 3 weeks ago. Harris was ahead by 2 in Pennsylvania, 2 in Wisconsin, 3 in Michigan. Look at where we are today. The race is even tighter than it was. Today, it's a 1-point advantage in Pennsylvania, 1 in Wisconsin, 1 in Michigan. Look, that's limited movement, but in a year in which this race has been so static, if we're talking 1-point movement, 1-point movement, 2-point movements, and we see movements in all three, this is the type of thing that, at least in the public polling, makes Democrats worried, and I think that the public polling in this case is reflected in some of that internal polling, some of that reporting that suggests that these Great Lake battleground states have certainly tightened a lot, where at this point they are way too close to call.
They are so invested in the horse race that they're not going to mention some of these things. Republicans, for the first time ever in states like Florida, are leading in early voting. They're blowing the numbers out in early voting in some very key states. They're also not mentioning, he's hinting at, but doesn't get to, the depth of the problem with Democrats' internal polling. See, this stuff is just nationwide, state by state by state. They do this during election season. The political parties and the pollsters who serve them are polling all year on every major issue. After every major press conference or event, they're polling. They're polling during press conferences and afterwards. They've got massive sets of data built up. We used to work with a company called Civic Science. Civic Science has since gotten an investment from Mark Cuban for whatever that helped, and it seems to have helped. John, the guy who runs it, brilliant guy. He comes out of the Pittsburgh area. He hired a bunch of pollsters to put together the largest online database of polling in the world. By this time, he's got to have somewhere around 2 billion answers to polls. In all likelihood, on your computer, there's a cookie from Civic Science. In all likelihood, you have taken a Civic Science poll. If you've ever taken a poll online, it's about 90% that you've taken a Civic Science poll. He polls everything. That leads to much more accurate data because you can tie people's intent to what people actually go and do. So the polling done by the political parties is deeper, longer term, and it is much more believable. And the Democrats are actually freaked out about that because, as David Brooks says, Kamala Harris is not running away with it. Mark Halperin. Mark Halperin's a guy who's been looking at Washington, D.C. for years. He leans left, but he will report bad news for Democrats. And he's looked into this. And Kamala Harris, as pointed out by David Brooks, who's having a panic attack about it, is not running away with this.
Good morning, everybody. Let's lead with the lead, as they say in journalism. If the early vote numbers stay the way they are, and that's a big if, we'll almost certainly know before Election Day who's going to win the election. We're going to talk a lot about that. The reasons why Democrats might be underperforming, the prospect that they'll recover. But again, make no mistake, if these numbers hold up in the states where we can understand even partially what the data is like, we'll know that Donald Trump's going to be president on Election Day. So we're going to talk about that, but I didn't want to bury that because it's extraordinarily important.
So is this, and I'm just going to pause for a second. Remember this. The New York Times and The Atlantic, MSNBC, have warned us. It could take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days to count the votes in the swing states. Just FYI. We used to count them all in one night. Could take a long time. Back to Mark Halperin.
And we got to track that day to day. That's more important than the polls right now. It's more important than almost anything because it's giving us insight into a variety of factors that are accounting for a Republican overperformance by various metrics in the early voting in the battleground state.
He's referring to the same thing I've been talking about in Florida. It's happening in the battleground states. Republicans are, for the first time ever, blowing out the numbers in early voting. Personally, I think it's a dreadful mistake. The parties want you to do it because it saves them money. Here's the way the economics work. You have the United States of America. Republicans have already decided they're not going to win California. They're not going to win the separate country of Washington. There's states they've written off. They want to contain the bleeding, try to do okay down ballot. The rest of the country costs them money to go chase down votes. The reason they want you to vote early is so they can check you off the list. They find out pretty quickly you voted. When that happens, then they can start to shift their resources and add resources and door-knocking resources to churning out people who have not voted. That's the logic for early voting. And I used to be in that business. It's called, it was Go to Victory. That was our plan. That was what it's called every single year, Go to Victory, GOTV, Go to Victory plan. Turnout was part of the game right now. It was the focus of the game. Here's why I think it's a dreadful mistake. You already know, right? The earlier we turn out, the more evidence they have on all the ballots they need to print or have signed or shipped state to state, as they apparently did in 2020. Pre-filled ballots taken, what was it, from New Jersey to, what state did they take that to? Was it Michigan? So it's tempting to hear that and go, I'm not going to get involved at all. Can I offer a counter proposal? We should pray for the sanctity of our vote. When you go to the mail, if you are forced to use mail, or like me, I get to go to a polling place, we should pray for the sanctity of our vote. We should draw down the delegated powers that Jesus Christ loans us to extend that protection to our ballots. And God wants there to be good, honest voting. How could I possibly know that? Because we can go easily consult God's word. Proverbs 11, verse 1. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Proverbs 20, verse 10. Unequal weights and unequal measures are both alike, an abomination to the Lord. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 35. You shall do no wrong in judgment in measures of length or weight or quantity. Proverbs 16, verse 11. A just balance and scales are the Lord's. All the weights in the bag are his work. So they're talking about physical things here. And don't cheat your neighbor. That all makes sense. Hence things like the baker's dozen. We don't think the Lord extends that to ballots? Of course he does. So why don't we, as we vote and as others vote, pray down protection on these ballots that God would frustrate the efforts of people who are making an attempt to steal this election by hiding things in needless complexity, or just, darn it, we're just so bad at what we do, which is another excuse they love to use. They love that excuse. We're just dumb. Remember, it was Tim Walz the other day who said, oh, I wasn't lying about being in Tiananmen Square. I'm just stupid. I'm just a knucklehead. So make me VP because I'm a knucklehead and a big dummy. They want to hide fraud in complexity. Complexity is a fraudster's friend. That's why they use things like the phrase quantitative easing. This is what I said to Zach Abraham, my chief investment officer at Bulwark Capital Management, my dear friend, brother who comes on nearly every Friday with us. When he and I first started doing radio together, and this was way back in the days of local radio, I asked him a question. I said, is quantitative easing basically just conjuring money? And he goes, well, no, there's more to it than, he goes, wait, what'd you call it? I said, conjuring. It's like a magician, an actual magician, conjures a rabbit. It didn't exist, and there it is. Now there's a rabbit. He sat there for a second and goes, well, yeah. Well, no, that's exactly what it is. It's conjuring fake money. So they call it quantitative easing. We listen to this. Don't worry, the Fed's going to come in with QE4, QE5, QE6. So they're going to conjure. Right. So they're going to put digits into a computer and say, hey, look, debt. And that debt you owe us, American citizens. You owe that to us, and now we get to monetize that. And then they shift that over to the Treasury, and the Treasury goes, oh, look, money. No, that's debt. No, it's money. And then they take that money and they give it to big companies. And it's illegal for them to do that, but they do it anyway. $720 billion during the COVID lockdowns. They hand it over to big companies. Guess what the big companies do with now that thing that's become real money, which started as debt you owe? They take that money and then they go out after the lockdowns and they say, hey, look, cheap commercial real estate. Cheap houses, all these storefronts, all these houses that people can't pay for. Let's go buy them at dimes on the dollar. So you end up now with 300 million homes owned by BlackRock or Vanguard. And they either keep them vacant or they rent them. You'll own nothing and be happy. And those houses are real wood, metal, and bricks. And the land in which they exist is actual dirt. It's real things that they got to purchase using QE, the conjuring of fake money. Your retirement account was not set up for a time when conjuring was taken to that degree. So do this. Get a free consultation from Zach Abraham. No obligation at all. He'll look at your retirement plans and tell you, yep, those are plans. You're going to know exactly how much money you have every month throughout your retirement. Congratulations, that's a plan, you're locked. Or he's going to say, you know what? Those are wishes. You're hoping that happens. Let's work together to see that something like it does happen. He'll do this free of charge, no obligation. Just go to knowyourriskradio.com. That's KNOW. KnowYourRiskRadio.com or call them at 866-779-RISK.
Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 24308.
So why isn't Kamala Harris running away with it, says David Brooks. Well, for all the reasons we've discussed, and then also this. Even hardcore leftists like Jim Gaffigan are hip to what happened, and it makes some of them uncomfortable. Jim Gaffigan at the Al Smith dinner.
You know, this has been an interesting presidential campaign. The Democrats have been telling us Trump's re-election is a threat to democracy. In fact, they were so concerned of this threat, they staged a coup, ousted their democratically elected incumbent, and installed Kamala Harris. In other words, all her dreams have come true.
All her dreams have come true. Looking in the background, non-response from fellow panelists, and I think what you can call a smattering of golf claps and nervous laughter from the Al Smith crowd. Everything Jim Gaffigan said is true. There are some people who look at that and go, I'd rather not vote for a candidate who committed a coup, who figuratively stabbed in the aorta the guy who made her VP. Biden was forced to do that, but he did it. A woman who stole Federal Election Commission monies, or monies regulated by the Federal Election Commission, checks written to Biden for president. She stole it and is using it. I'd rather not back that because I prefer to vote. She's not running away with it because a lot of Democrats have looked at that and said, I cannot, in good conscience, back this. And there are even famous Democrats making statements about it. Jim Gaffigan didn't say he was going to vote for Trump, but he talked about a coup. Kamala Harris is losing votes from American Jews. She's losing votes from American Muslims. How do you do that? Because it's classic Kamala Harris. You say whatever you're told to say at any one time because you're told to say it. This is Kamala Harris. She's responding to a heckler that's screaming that Israel is committing genocide.
And it is for that reason that I say, and Mark knows, I am so invested in you all in every way.
And in genocide, right? Billions of dollars in genocide? Billions of dollars in genocide, you invested that in?
You know what? I respect your right to speak. I'm speaking right now. I know what you're speaking of.
What is it?
I want the ceasefire.
But what about the genocide?
I want the war to end.
What about the genocide,
and
though?
I respect your right to speak, but I am speaking right now.
You're not speaking about genocide. What about genocide? Billions of dollars, 42,000 people dead, 19,000 children are dead. 19,000 children are dead, and you won't call it a genocide.
So he's helped out of the event by some kind officers. And Kamala Harris then, because she's Kamala Harris, decided to do a little bit more clarifying.
Right now, I know what you're speaking of.
What is
I
it?
want the ceasefire.
But what about the genocide?
I want the war to end.
What about the genocide,
And I
though?
respect your right to speak, but I am speaking right now.
Yeah!
So,
2,000 people dead, 19,000 children are dead. 19,000 children are dead, and you won't call it a genocide.
So, listen. What he's talking about, it's real, and so that's not the subject that I came to discuss today. But it's real, and I respect his voice. So listen. Here we are. You all have the right and the ability to have opportunity available to you at each.
Word salad. You all have the right and the opportunity to have something available to you. So is it genocide? If so, why do you back Israel? If it's not genocide, why did you say it's genocide? Why did your administration allow and not yet put in prison the Iranian American who shared important data on Israel's defense with Iran? Why are you funding both sides of that war? Why did you send Hamas money? Oh, it was for aid, right, so that they can use their own money on weapons. Got it. She's losing the Muslim votes by percentages, not overall, but by percentages. She's losing the Jewish American vote, not overall, but by percentages. She's losing the black vote, not overall, but by percentages. She's not running away with it because she's allowed crime to run away in those cities and black people see it. Black people live largely in urban areas. They're watching it. She's losing because the Associated Press and the Mockingbird media simply are unable to contain themselves to do anything that even approaches journalism when it relates to Donald Trump. This is an image of Trump from the Associated Press. First up, if he wins next month's election, Donald Trump would be the oldest person in U.S. history to be elected president. Yet the 78-year-old Republican nominee refuses to disclose new details about his physical or mental well-being. This is an image from the Associated Press. This is from July 3, 2024, the one on President Trump, October 19, 2024, just a few months ago. Here's what the Associated Press said about figurehead Biden. Biden at 81. Sharp and focused, but sometimes confused and forgetful. But President Trump, he better release information on his physical and mental health. The Associated Press, who hid the fact that Biden has been in cognitive decline for easily 4 years and probably has Parkinson's disease. She's not running away with it because many people like me watched her run away with a rigged election. I know it was rigged. I think it was stolen. Here's a great example of how safe and secure your elections are. We talked about this earlier this week, and I went and got the pictures. A election lawyer was driving by some election facilities and stopped and took a picture. This is in Minnesota. It is a picture of an open hatchback. Those are ballots in those boxes, presumably ballots filled out. They are sealed with zip ties. Some zip ties are red, as the Republican Party's been turned into. Some are blue, as the Democrats chose to be. You do know they flipped those colors, right? Did you know that? The national media, when color TV became a thing, switched the colors. It used to be that Republicans had blue. They were seen as the blue party. And then, after the red commie scare, the Mockingbird media got together and said, it's not fair that Democrats are seen as the red party, so we're going to switch back and forth for a while. We're going to turn the Republicans red and the Democrats blue, then we'll turn things around. And they just never got around to turning things around. She's not running away with it because people look at statistics like this. There are 8,435,960 registered voters in the state of Michigan. There are, it has a population, though. That's registered voters, state of Michigan, 8,435,960. It has a population of 7,925,350 in the state. That means that there are inactive voter registrations slated for cancellation in 2027 of 260,178. They're going to get around to canceling them, but not now, in a few years, after this very important election. There's a lot more to why Kamala Harris is not running away with it, because some of us are tired of hearing pretend fascism discussed and are actually looking at real live fascism, like's going on in one of the key battleground states where the law enforcement people from their local DOJ, their attorneys general, went and kicked in some doors. I'll tell you about that case in a second. It's tempting during times like these to say everything is corrupt, and yet everything is not corrupt. There are signs of light everywhere. Of course, God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. There are people who stand against the tide of fascism and evil, even when it's very difficult. It's difficult these days to start any small company, let alone a soap company, because is the world really clamoring for yet another soap to choose from? Maybe not. But what about this? What if you're not choosing soap? What if this soap is a tie? Because you can go find some artisan soaps. You can go to Trader Joe's. There's artisan soaps there. You can go to Pilgrim Market. There's artisan soaps. How many of them have a mission beyond soap? In this case, to employ people like Alan, who's 13, has been through 18 operations. He was supposed to have been aborted, but his parents refused, even though the doctors pushed him, please, please, please let us abort him. His brother Ian now works at Alan Soaps. A young woman who got autism late in life now works there. When she got autism late in life, the feedback from doctors was, well, there's always facilities she could live in. I mean, she doesn't need to work. Now, is the soap really a tie? Maybe not. Artisan doesn't mean made in America. Allen soaps are made in America. Artisan doesn't mean that it's a small company. It might be an extension of Dove or Pfizer Consumer Health. They just put a different brand on things. Not the case with Allen's. That soap is made by a family, lives in America with 3 generations of soap-making expertise, and it is all natural. Artisan doesn't always mean that. It does with Allen's. So make a decision. Roll the dice on companies that probably don't agree with your values, or go straight in, all in, and wash your body as you keep your soul clean. Go to allensoaps.com/Todd. You get 10% off all their products there. allensoaps.com/Todd. This is from the Federalist. It's an exclusive piece there. Wrote, Wisconsin leftist-led DOJ raids Wausau mayor's home in ballot Dropbox probe. This is by MD Kittle, October 18, 2024. Democrat Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Call's Department of Justice raided the home and office of conservative Wausau Mayor Doug Diney in connection to Diney's removal of unsecured absentee ballot drop boxes, sources tell the Federalist. The raid took place Wednesday afternoon, according to a source with information on the stunning law enforcement operation. The source, who asked not to be identified because of the developing nature of the case, tells the Federalist that law enforcement officials took cell phones and other electronic devices, supposedly relevant to the investigation. That included Diney's wife's cell phone, the sources said. As the Federalist reported last month, Diney removed the controversial absentee ballot box positioned outside City Hall because he said it was not secure. Wausau City Clerk Caitlin Bernard had, according to reports, decided to bring back the drop box without approval from the Wausau City Council. Bernard told the Washington Post she noticed the drop box was missing and notified Teresa Weston, Marathon County's Democrat district attorney. Weston told the Post that her office is now investigating. Diney's defended his decision to remove the drop box and place it inside City Hall. In other words, in a secure location. Leaving unsecured ballot boxes in public is a decision. They're empty vessels, unsecured. Kamala Harris is an empty vessel, unsecured by any moral grounding whatsoever. Certainly not the Word of God. Her morality is her mood. If she needs more power, she'll do things to get more power. Who's running her? We don't know, but we know what's running her. Avarice. One of the least biblical emotions that exists, pride and avarice. Avarice is to seek power over others, it's to desire it, and pride is pretending to yourself that you've created yourself from whole cloth. God abhors both of those emotions, and He reminds us to use equal weights and measures. Lord, thank you for your book, your word, your Son, and pursuing us, even as you leave the 99 to come and track us down and bring us back into the family. This is the Todd Herman Show. Please go be well, be strong, be kind. Please make every effort to walk in the light of Christ.